It was a Monday morning, and we were at the kitchen table, finishing up breakfast. I had my coffee in one hand and the newspaper in the other when my wife suddenly said, "David, can you put the newspaper down? I need to talk to you." I lowered the paper and glanced at her. She hesitated for a second before continuing, "I'm leaving you, David. I want a divorce." Without much thought, I went back to the newspaper and casually flipped to the sports section. "Is that all?" I asked. "I'm serious, David," she snapped, her tone sharpening. I ignored her, which only seemed to stoke her frustration. "Damn it, David. Put that paper down and talk to me about this." I sighed and replied coolly, "I don't have anything to say except goodbye. Honestly, it's not much of a loss. You've been a lousy wife for over a year. So, just go." I folded the paper neatly, stood up, and headed to my home office. From my desk, I grabbed a notebook and pen, pulled an envelope from a drawer, and returned to the table. On the top page of the notebook, I scribbled, "Andrew, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank God she's leaving me." An idea struck me, so I paused, pulled out a lottery ticket I'd bought the night before, and slipped it into the envelope. Beneath the note, I wrote, "Maybe if you're lucky enough to win, it'll keep her satisfied, so she won't cheat on you, too. Good luck, kid. You're going to need it." I signed it, a very grateful David, folded the paper, sealed the envelope, and handed it to Rita. "When you see him, give him this," I said. Her face froze in shock. "You knew?" she stammered. I smirked. "Just because you think I'm clueless doesn't mean I actually am." I snatched the envelope back from her hand. "Actually, maybe I'll mail it myself. I don't trust you not to read it and throw it away." She stood there, dumbfounded. "Now," I said with finality, "why don't you pack your things and leave? Since you're the one walking away, you need to be out of the house ASAP." "I'm not going anywhere," she shot back. "I'm not moving out just so you can bring someone else in." I didn't bother to argue. Instead, I grabbed a travel mug, poured in some coffee, topped it off, and left for work. On the way, I stopped by the bank, closed our joint savings and checking accounts, and emptied the safe deposit box. Then, I opened new accounts in my name at a bank closer to work. Next, I called and canceled all our shared credit cards, arranging for replacements issued under my name alone. With that out of the way, I threw myself into work. That evening, I stayed late, had dinner and drinks with my executive assistant, Lisa, and let it slip that I was back on the market. "If your sister's still interested, let her know," I teased. Lisa laughed, leaning in. "Forget my sister. If you're single again, I want first dibs." Her words caught me off guard. Lisa had been with me for over a decade, starting as a secretary before I promoted her to my executive assistant 2 years ago. I'd always seen her as professional and sharp, but never expected her to show interest in me. "All right," I joked. "Your sister gets bumped to second place. You're up first." "I'm not joking, boss," she said, her tone turning serious. "I mean it." "Lisa," I began cautiously, "you might change your mind once you hear what's been going on." I explained the situation. Rita wants a divorce because she's decided to go all in with her lover. She started sleeping with the guy about a year and a half ago, and I guess sneaking around wasn't cutting it anymore. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "How long have you known?" "Since the beginning," I admitted. "A friend saw her going into a motel with him and tipped me off. I hired a PI who confirmed everything within a week. And you just did nothing? What was I supposed to do? Get angry and blow up my life?" Divorce laws in this state are no fault, so everything gets split 50 to 50. That means selling the house, giving her half the proceeds, and losing everything I enjoy: my pool, hot tub, woodworking shop, and 3-car garage. No thanks. I figured I'd let her keep cooking, cleaning, and doing my laundry while I waited it out. Lisa stared at me, incredulous. "How could you stand being around her, knowing she was cheating?" "It's not as hard as you'd think," I replied. "Love turns to hate surprisingly fast, and after that, it's just indifference." "But what about, intimacy? How did you go a year and a half without it?" I laughed. "Who said I went without? As long as Rita was willing, I wasn't turning her down. Sure, the frequency dropped, and I avoided her on the days I knew she was with him, but other than that, I just stopped pretending it was love and treated it like, well, Just sex? Do you know why she did it? Lisa asked. Not really, I said with a shrug. But something tells me he wasn't her first. I can't say for certain, but I do know that in the 10 years we've been married, Rita has gone through this kind of phase 4 times, as far as I can recall. Each time, her behavior was eerily similar to how she's acted for the past year and a half since she got involved with this guy. It's just a hunch, but I'd wager the other times were for the same reason. If no one had caught her in the act and tipped me off, I might have dismissed her recent attitude as just another one of those mysterious women's things. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't really matter. This affair is undeniable, and that's all I need to know to label her a cheater. So, what are you going to do now? Lisa asked. Wait, I said simply. Wait for what? To see what she does next. She's on her own now. I've emptied the bank accounts, canceled her credit cards, and told her to leave the house. She wanted a divorce, so I'm letting her take the lead. The problem is, she doesn't earn enough to hire a lawyer, so she'll have to ask her lover for the money. Whether or not he'll give it to her is anyone's guess. For all I know, they planned this together, but I wouldn't bet on it. Lisa shook her head. You're looking at this the wrong way, David. How so? If she files first, she's in control. You don't know what she might do. What if she serves you with papers and the court orders you out of the house while the divorce is ongoing? What if she claims mental or physical abuse and gets a restraining order? You need to get ahead of this. Be the one in the driver's seat. Make her react to you, not the other way around. She paused for a moment, then added, Besides, you'd be helping me out. Helping you? I raised an eyebrow. Yeah. If you're going to sit around and wait for her to file, what happens if she doesn't? What if her lover doesn't give her the money? That could leave us in a mess. If we're together before anything legal happens, she could accuse you of adultery and use that against you. But if you file first, it makes it clear that, in your eyes, the marriage is already over. From that point on, what you do is none of her business. I thought about what she said. Legally, I'd still be married until the divorce is finalized. Even if we got together, it'd technically still be adultery. Technically, yes, Lisa said, but no judge is going to hold that against you if it happens after you file. The key is to take action now, before she does. If you wait, she controls the timeline. It could take years, or maybe just a week. But either way, it's on her terms. If you file, you could have the papers ready by Thursday, and that would give me the weekend to focus on winning you over. I smirked. Winning me over? I'm serious, David, Lisa said, leaning forward. What's the point of being first in line if I don't make my move? She was right, and I knew it. I pulled out my phone and speed-dialed Alex, a friend of mine since 3rd grade and a family law attorney, a polite term for a divorce lawyer. When he picked up, I explained the situation and told him I needed his help. Alex sounded genuinely sympathetic. He and his wife Sandra were friends of ours, and he liked Rita, but he assured me he'd take care of everything first thing in the morning. He asked me to stop by his office around lunchtime to sign the paperwork, and then we could grab lunch together. Before we hung up, I added, by the way, I'd like to file for a restraining order, too. Why's that? Alex asked, sounding surprised. I lied. Rita said her lover, Andrew, would straighten me out if I gave her any trouble. Alex chuckled. David, that sounds like nonsense, but I'll file it anyway. Just so you know, there'll be a hearing within 10 days to determine whether the order stays in effect. That's fine, I said. Right now, I just need her out of the house and to keep her out for a while. We don't have kids, so there's no real reason she'd need to stay there during the divorce. I'm banking on the principle of possession being 9/10 of the law. There's no reason for a judge to kick me out and let her move in. We wrapped up the call, and I turned back to Lisa. So, what do you have planned for me this weekend? She grinned and laid out her ideas. They sounded pretty good to me. When I got home, Rita was still there, sitting at the kitchen table and sorting through some papers. Why are you still here? I asked, grabbing a beer from the fridge. This is my house too, she shot back. I'll stay until I figure out where to go. If you don't like it, you're free to leave. Not a chance, I said, sitting down across from her. Let's talk about what happens next. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. You want a divorce? Then go hire a lawyer, file the paperwork, and cover the court costs. I'll fight you every step of the way. We live in a no-fault state, so everything gets split 50-50ths. That means every decision will have to be negotiated. And I'll drag this out as long as I can to make sure your attorney fees keep piling up. Those folks don't work for free, you know? So, you want the coffee table, huh? Well, guess what? I want it too. And the couch? Too bad, Rita. That piece has sentimental value, and I'm not giving it up, I said with a cold smile. Why are you acting like this all of a sudden? She snapped. You didn't seem to care about any of this before. When I told you I wanted a divorce, you barely reacted. You just told me to pack my things and leave. That was before I had time to think, I replied, meeting her gaze. Then, I decided to take a gamble. I let you off the hook the first 3 times because you didn't want a divorce. Back then, I loved you enough to keep my mouth shut and stay with you because you always came back to me. Her eyes shifted away when I mentioned the first 3 times. To me, that was all the confirmation I needed. I'm not sure why I stayed, I continued, my tone quieter. Maybe I thought I'd done something to piss you off so badly that you felt you had to get even. And when those affairs ended, I foolishly thought it was because you'd realized you loved me and wanted to come back. I glanced down at the floor and noticed the dirt scuffing my shoes. When this thing with Andrew started, I assumed it was just another repeat of the old patterns. But now I see I was wrong. You're not someone who made a mistake. You're a cheater through and through. And if you hadn't decided to leave me for him, it wouldn't have been long before you found someone else to spread your legs for. The words left my mouth before I even thought to censor myself. I paused and took a breath, realizing my anger was spiraling. What I really wanted, I said, my voice low and controlled, was to grab a thick belt and beat you with it until your skin broke and you were bleeding on the floor. But I'm not going to jail for you. Instead, I'm going to make this divorce as messy and expensive as possible. You're right, this is your house too, I conceded. And if you've decided to stay, I can't stop you. But I don't have to like it, and I sure as hell don't have to talk to you. Move your stuff into one of the spare bedrooms and stay the hell away from me. With that, I finished my beer and went upstairs to what used to be our bedroom to get ready for bed. As I lay there, I thought I'd given her enough to chew on. She'd need to talk things over with Andrew and figure out her next steps. That time she'd spend thinking and scrambling, was exactly what Alex needed to serve her with the divorce papers and secure the restraining order. Of course, there was always the chance she'd already seen a lawyer, and the papers were on their way to me. But I'd taken the funds when I canceled the credit cards, so unless Andrew footed the bill, she might be stuck. The next morning, I left the house before she came out of her room. I stopped by a local bed and breakfast cafe for breakfast, sipping my coffee while making a list of people I'd call once Rita was served. I wasn't about to let her paint me as the bad guy in this. Everyone would hear my side first. At work, Lisa was all smiles. I'm really looking forward to this weekend, she said, her tone leaving no doubt about her intentions. Honestly, I was looking forward to it too. During lunch, I met Alex and signed the papers. He promised to file them right after lunch and asked, "You still want her served at work?" "Damn right," I said. "Around 10 tomorrow. Call me as soon as it's done. I want the locks changed before she gets back to the house." Before heading back to the office, I called a locksmith and arranged for a rush service the next day. It cost extra, but it was worth every penny. When I got home, Rita's car was in the driveway, but she stayed in her room. I didn't see her at all that evening. The next morning, I went back to the cafe. The waitress, brought my coffee and said, "Where's Kathy? You two are usually together, and now I've seen you 2 days in a row without her." "You won't see us together anymore," I said flatly. "We're splitting up." "I see," she said, placing the bill on the table. Then, with a sly smile, she added, "My phone number's on the back, mine, not the restaurant's." I was speechless as she walked away. 2 women in 2 days had shown interest in me, yet somehow, I wasn't enough for the woman I married. I'd never know why, and I'd never ask. I lingered at the cafe, drinking my coffee and reading the paper, until I knew Rita would have left for work. Then I went home and started packing her things, moving them into the garage. At 10:15, Alex called to say the papers had been served. I immediately called the locksmith, and within 20 minutes, he was changing the locks. Not even an hour later, Rita's car sped into the driveway. She froze when she saw the wide-open garage door and the large cardboard sign that read, "Rita, all your things are here in the garage." She stood there for a long moment, staring at the sign, then tried to unlock the door. When her keys didn't work, she rang the doorbell, but I didn't answer. Eventually, she left. After peeking into the garage, I saw she'd taken a couple of bags. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Rita. "Hello? You're such an a-hole," she shouted. "Did you really have to embarrass me in front of my colleagues?" "It's better than letting you humiliate me in front of mine," I replied. "What the hell is this restraining order crap? I was afraid you'd ask Andrew to come beat me up for being rude to you. That's why. I need to get into the house to grab some things," she said. "All your things are in the garage, Rita," I replied and hung up. "I didn't change the garage door code, so your opener will still work," I told her. "If there's something you need that's not in the garage, make a list and tell me where to find it. I'll move it for you." "Stop being ridiculous, David," Rita snapped. "You're making this much harder than it has to be." "Sorry, Rita," I replied with a smirk. "But causing you a little inconvenience doesn't even come close to paying you back for the years you tormented me. Be grateful I didn't resort to violence. Goodbye." I hung up before she could respond. Then I sat down with my phone and started calling everyone on my list. Most people were shocked to hear that Rita had cheated, but a couple weren't surprised at all. "Finally caught her, huh?" one of them said. Another remarked, "I always thought you two had an open marriage. She was always out with some guy, and you never mentioned it, so I just assumed." Well, that made it easy to cross those two off my friends' list. Rita's parents took the news the hardest. They didn't believe me at first, insisting I must be mistaken. I had always liked them. They treated me like the son they never had. But I wasn't about to let Rita get to them first with her version of the story. I didn't want them thinking poorly of me. After finishing the calls, I went through the house one last time to gather up the rest of Rita's belongings. Then I made myself some lunch. I had just finished eating when the security company arrived. I didn't trust Rita to respect the restraining order, and I had no doubt she'd try to break into the house. So I decided to install a full security system, cameras included. That Thursday, when I told Lisa everything was set for the weekend, her eyes lit up. "Tomorrow night, we'll start with dinner and dancing," she said with a grin. Her excitement was contagious, and I found myself smiling back. When I got home later that evening, Rita had done exactly what I expected. She'd taken some of her things and then broken in through the door connecting the garage to the house. The kitchen was a disaster. Plates and glasses smashed across the floor. In the living room, a couple of lamps had been knocked over and broken. But the kicker? She'd pulled all my clothes out of the closet, piled them on the floor, and then peed on them. Thankfully, all of it had been caught on the security cameras. Not only did I have proof that she'd violated the restraining order, but I also had evidence of her malicious and destructive behavior. I called Alex immediately, and he got in touch with the police. They came by, took a report, and snapped some photos. The next day, Rita was arrested at work. She was fingerprinted, photographed, and brought before a judge. She was charged with violating the restraining order and the willful destruction of private property. To my surprise, the judge set a hearing date and released her on her own recognizance. Despite the chaos, my date with Lisa that night was fantastic. We had a great time, and by Saturday, we were on our second date. Sunday was just as enjoyable, a lovely picnic in the park. On Monday, the hearing for the restraining order took place. When the judge reviewed the security footage, he not only made the restraining order permanent, but also ordered Rita to replace everything she destroyed, pay for my dry cleaning, and cover the cost of cleaning the bedroom. She was given 10 days to comply or face jail time for contempt of court. To rub salt in the wound, I hired the most expensive cleaning company I could find. Unfortunately, Rita managed to scrounge up the money to meet all the judge's demands, so I didn't get the satisfaction of seeing her jailed. The next 2 weeks flew by, and Lisa and I spent more time together. Though nothing serious happened beyond a few intense kisses, we both knew we were approaching a turning point. When the divorce was finalized 6 months later, it was a standard no-fault case. Everything was split 50-50ths. I refinanced the house to buy out Rita's share. What she didn't know was that I had been quietly saving money in a separate account for a round-the-world trip I'd planned for our anniversary. Since she had no clue about it, she didn't get a cent. She also didn't know about the last 2 certificates of deposit I'd locked away using my bonus checks. One final victory came when alimony was decided. While Rita was awarded payments for 2 years, or until she remarried, the amount was set at just $100 a week, far less than the $500 she demanded. Alex told me we got lucky with the judges assigned to my cases. Both had been through divorces with cheating spouses, and while they followed the law, they weren't inclined to go out of their way to help her. Whatever Rita had with Andrew clearly didn't last, because 7 months after the divorce, she was back living with her parents. 8 months post-divorce, I found myself at a bar in the Hilton, enjoying a beer and a steak sandwich for lunch. Someone slid onto the stool next to me and said, "Can I buy you a beer?" I turned to see none other than Rita's former lover. Curious, I gestured for him to continue. He ordered us both a beer, then stared at his bottle for a long moment before he began peeling the label. Little bits of paper piled up in front of him as he finally said, "I didn't mean to screw things up for you." He still wasn't looking at me as he continued. The night I met her, she wasn't wearing a wedding ring, so I didn't know she was married. She wasn't acting like a married woman either. She was at Bud's bar with a group of her coworkers, and when I asked her to dance, she said yes. I bought her a drink, and she invited me to join her and the other girls at their table. We danced 3 more times that night, and when I asked her out, she said yes. I fell hard and fast for her. Within a month, we were sneaking off to have sex whenever we could manage it. At first, we relied on motels since I was sharing an apartment with 2 roommates, and one of them was always around. We couldn't go to her place either. She said she lived with her disabled mother and could only go out when someone else was available to care for her mom. Eventually, I got my own apartment, and we no longer had to rely on motels. Even though we couldn't meet regularly, I was in love with her and had plans to propose. I even started looking at houses big enough for the two of us and her mother. But before I could pop the question, someone I knew asked me, "Why are you dating a cheater?" I was ready to punch him for saying that, but then he told me Rita was married. He also revealed that she had a history of infidelity, including cheating on her husband with his brother 2 years earlier. When her husband found out, he ended things with her. At first, I refused to believe him, but then your letter arrived. I sat on it for a week before confronting her. When I finally did, she broke down in tears. She claimed she didn't love you and painted you as an abusive drunk who physically and emotionally tormented her. She said she hated you but stayed out of fear because you'd supposedly threatened to track her down and kill her and anyone she was with. By then, I had already done some digging of my own and discovered she was lying. That erased any thoughts I had about marrying her. Still, she was incredible in bed, and since you'd kicked her out, I let her move in with me, on the condition that she'd keep sleeping with me. Things were fine until the divorce was finalized. That's when she started talking about marriage again, and I ended things. You see, my parents split up because my mom cheated on my dad. My dad got custody of me, and later, my mom remarried, only to cheat on her second husband. She married a third time and cheated on him too. Because of that, I firmly believe in the saying, once a cheater, always a cheater. I told Rita she was welcome to stay if she was okay with a casual, friends with benefits arrangement, but there would never be anything more between us. About 3 weeks later, I came home from work and found she was gone. He took another sip of his beer before saying, "There were rumors that you knew about our affair all along. People couldn't figure out why you didn't divorce her immediately." I shrugged. Like you said, she was damn good in bed. I decided to leave things as they were, enjoying the sex and the fact that someone was cooking, cleaning, and doing the laundry. I probably would have kept it going if she hadn't brought up leaving and wanting a divorce. He laughed bitterly. "I never thought I'd say this to you, of all people, but I miss having her in my bed." He finished his beer, stood up, and pulled something out of his pocket. He set it on the counter and slid it toward me. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "It's the lottery ticket you gave me," he said. "It's a winner. Here's your half." He handed me a cashier's check. The amount was staggering, a very, very large sum. "I waited to give it to you until the divorce was finalized," he added. "This way, you wouldn't have to split it with her." See you around, he said before walking away. I stared at the check, still stunned, before heading back to the office. Alan, my assistant, took one look at me and said, "You look like the cat that just ate the canary. Was lunch that good?" I smiled. Lunch was impressive. "Oh, right," Alan said, catching on. "Lisa doesn't work for you anymore, huh?" "Not in the office," I replied, still smiling. "She's home painting the nursery for the twins." Subscribe so you don't miss new stories on the channel.